Okay, welcome everyone. It's 1:30 and we'll call the Budget Committee meeting of the whole to order. We start with adoption of the agenda. Somebody willing to move that? Thank you, Councillor Silovitz. Any discussion there? All in favor? Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so do any members have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? I see none. We have no delegations. We can move right into scheduled business, but before we do, I just want to preface a little bit where we're at here before introducing our treasurer. This is our first budget meeting of the 2025 cycle, and essentially it's our look at what happened last year in 2024. In June, we're going to be looking at tariff fees, and then we start back in the fall session with forecast for 2025, and then get into the budgeting process for 2026. So that's where we're at. We're here again, and I just want to really congratulate this finance team. We're so lucky, and we're really blessed at the city of Richmond Hill to have a top-notch finance team from top to bottom. This department are really the unsung heroes that make a lot of things happen. We are competitive on every metric there is when it comes to financial and fiscal management. Top three always in our tax rate in the GTA, but one of the highest reserve per capita position. We've got lots of good news coming out of 2024. I mean, if you wanted to fire your stockbroker and you're looking to hire, our team is managed. Well, under the legislative restrictions that they have and which investment vehicles they're allowed to use, they've managed a double-digit return in 2024. I mean, that's just, I don't know if there's any other government entity that can compare. Of course, there are a lot of factors that went into that, and 2024 was a strange year, but these are all good news things for Richmond Hill. We should be very proud of our financial management, and with that, I'm gonna allow our treasurer and director of finance, Gigi Lee, to give us her year-end operating results for 2024. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Budget Chair DePaula, Mayor West, and members of the committee. It's my pleasure to be here today before the Budget Committee. There are 3 items on the agenda, with 2 of them related to the 2024 year-end results, followed by the 2026 budget strategy. There'll be 2 presentations. I'm here first to present the year-end financial and operating results for Richmond Hill for the fiscal year 2024. The annual review is not only a statutory requirement, but it's also a key opportunity to reflect on the city's financial health and assess how public funds were managed. Agenda item 5.1 provides the details of the year-end results. In this presentation, we'll walk through the high-level operating performance, opportunities and challenges that we faced, and what this means moving forward into 2025 and looking ahead into the next fiscal year. Let's begin by looking at the overall financial summary and key contributors that shaped our year. The operating fund is predominantly funded through property tax revenues and user fees, which are used to support city services. The budget process produces an operating budget that provides residents and businesses with quality levels of service through the effective and efficient use of resources. The budget is a financial expression of a static plan based on known information at the time. Over the course of the year, circumstances often arise that change the plan, and the costing or financials of the plan will also need to be adjusted. As a whole, actual financial results are unlikely to perfectly align to those that were budgeted. Shown on this slide is a good news story. The overall operating budget surplus was just over $2 million, With a proposed budget carry forwards of $255,000, the net operating surplus is approximately $1.8 million. On an operating expenditure budget of $212 million, we were over 99% to budget, with a surplus of being less than 1%. What's more important to note is that a review of the prior year budget variances not only provides us with a measure of the previous year's results, it also helps us with current year forecasting and formulating the upcoming year's budget based on recent experience. As you can see from the slide, the surplus is made of positive as well as negative factors, and I'll go into those in details in the upcoming slides. The surplus is recommended to be allocated to the Tax Rate Stabilization Reserve and the WSIB Reserve. This will help achieve the target balance for the Tax Rate Stabilization Reserve to offset one-time expenses and future fluctuations in tax rates. The allocation to the WSIB Reserve Fund is needed to help ensure adequate funds are available to address long-term liabilities associated with the city's commitment in this area. The positive contributors are either higher revenues or lower expenses to budget, and this slide highlights the most notable ones totaling $7 million. Consistent with the prior year, we are seeing an upward trend on penalties and interest as a result of the tax receivables. The city has implemented a plan to reduce the receivables, which includes reinitiating the full collection procedures as noted previously. The goal is to gradually lower the receivables and the amount of tax arrears over the next couple of years. Aquatic fitness and recreation programs were about $1.1 million favorable. It's largely due to stronger than expected fitness membership revenues, as well as additional fitness classes, also attributing to a substantial effort from staff in training and hiring casual staff that lead to an increase in aquatics instructional programming. The extended closure of the wave pool required the city to maximize efficiencies by filling the programmable space at other facilities rather than opening an additional facility at suboptimal staffing levels. Winter maintenance contracts were favorable due to milder winter in the beginning of 2024, and that entailed fewer contractor deployments. Also, another recurring item is the payment in lieu of taxes related to the York Region Transit Facility on Orlando Drive. So we continue to see that as one of our favorable variances. Looking at parking fines, in 2024, the Community Standards Division, they transitioned to 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week bylaw enforcement coverage. This transition was possible by converting parking enforcement officers into community standards officers with expanded responsibilities and revised their shift schedule. The success of this conversion far exceeded expectations, resulting in enhanced service delivery, improved staff engagement, and reducing sick time, and overall, about $613,000 more than forecasted in parking fine revenues. Also looking at other revenues that were higher in 2024, the elimination of the collaborative application process and planning and the conversion of the CAP submissions eliminated the deferral of application fees. So overall, we also saw an increase in that area as well. We're also looking at a continued upward trend in commissioner revenues from lottery licensing. And then again, similar to the year prior, we did observe lower wastage tonnage than forecasted when it comes to refuse collection. So overall, we've highlighted the most notable contributors under the positive. So essentially, these are all favorable experiences or variances to budget. On the other hand, negative variance contributors reflect lower revenues or higher expenses to budget. When we look at the first line, it's related to personnel gapping. These are typically savings primarily from vacancies, attrition, turnovers, etc. We do have a provision within the budget for gapping. In 2024, gapping was unfavorable, resulting from a number of different factors, including IT capital resources to operating and to backfill vacancies, as well as the fire shift premium costs as well as the overtime that was in the fire services division. Moving along, when we look at the roads contracts and materials, we saw an increase in service requests associated with the implementation of TSOS, which is the Transportation Safety and Operations Strategy, as well as additional sidewalk repair work that was done through the financial control bylaw. The cost of the wave pool was approximately $600,000 in 2024. The city identified issues with the piping systems as well as piping failures that were the root cause of the leaks. So emergency repairs were done, and it required excavation as well as repair of the piping and the pool basin. So that was done in 2024. We've been seeing a downward trend since the pandemic on supplementary assessments, and supplementary tax revenues are related to new properties and alterations or improvements. In 2024, we did see supplementary assessments that are lower to budget. We are experiencing a slowdown in construction, and that's expected to continue into 2025. Highlighting the QP strike-related costs here, when we look at the cost that's net of savings, it's approximately $400,000. So this actually highlights the personnel costs as well as the non-personnel costs that we have incurred as part of the labor disruption. ActiveNet, it's a little bit over budget by $221,000, and that's very much related to what you saw on the earlier slide with the higher uptake and more registrations. It did mean that our transaction charges related to ActiveNet also increased as well. For vehicles and equipments in fire, we did see some unexpected breakdowns, and so there were more assets being serviced by external providers. That's why we're seeing the negative variance of close to $200,000. And just moving down the list, the library deficit. So there was a deficit in the library's books in 2024, primarily as a result of the QP collective agreement, as well as the transition of the CEO position. So staff are recommending that we fund this one-time increase and the grant so that the library will have a net of zero. And then last but not least, there are a couple other items that are smaller in nature. So it's really reflecting the day-to-day variances when it comes to utilities. So as well as the staircase repairs, that was actually approved as part of the mid-year forecast report that was provided to council early in 2024. As part of the 2024 year-end forecast, we did have a staff report that identified these programs that would have been considered in 2025, but they were approved to be accelerated and implemented in 2024 as a result of the forecasted year-end surplus. So what you see here essentially are those 3 programs that were advanced utilizing the anticipated surplus from the 2024 budget. Budget carry forwards represent unspent 2024 budget for initiatives that have either partially started or deferred for completion in 2025. As you can see on the slide, overall, the total is approximately $255,000, essentially to carry these projects and initiatives to continue into 2025. Moving along to the water and wastewater budget results, the water and wastewater fees are collected from residents and businesses to help support the operations, maintenance, and repair of the water and sanitary system. These financial results are presented under the water and wastewater fund, so separate from the operating fund. Overall, we are at about 97.5% to budget. There is a deficit of $2.4 million that will be funded from the Water Rate Stabilization Reserve, and it's primarily due to the higher percentage of unbilled water compared to budget. In 2024, the city was active in replacing several large water main projects that are commissioning of these water mains required an excessive amount of flushing to take place. This flushing of water is not metered and it's not billed, as these are city projects. There were also 23 water main breaks in 2024, leading to a total deficit of $3 million. The deficit is partially, as you can see on the slide, offset by favorable investment income, savings in maintenance and operations, as well as water metered contract services. The stormwater management summarizes stormwater fee revenues, offsetting against the cost of maintaining stormwater ponds, storm sewers, and catch basins. For 2024, we are reporting a surplus of almost 200,000, or just under 97% to budget. Primarily a result of increased revenues due to the amendment in property types, offset by increased number of infrastructure repairs for the rehabilitation of sanitary and storm sewers. The surplus of almost $200,000 will be allocated to the Water Quality Preserve Fund. This slide here highlights the recommendations from the staff report. Mr. Chair, that concludes my first presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to ask that someone put the motion on the floor of the staff recommended motion, if they're willing to, and then we'll also open it up for anyone for questions. Councillor Tree,
Yeah, I can move it.
do you have any questions or?
Yeah, I do have questions. Okay, thank you so much, our chairs, our Dr. Lee. So I think the positive result is we got supplies from 2024 with $1.8 million. That's great achievement. We save a lot of money here. I do have a question because last year when we have these reviews, I remember I have a slide here is regarding to the projection updated funding deficits in 2025, also next 10 years, plus the cash contribution via projected expense. So from the projection perspective, if I look at last year's projections for the budgetings, just based on tax supported budget or forecasting, our level, what we got so far is far lower than what we expected. So my question here is, if I look at the back 5 years surplus, maybe I'm wrong. So every year we do have a certain surplus, but from projection perspective, every year we have a big gap in the projection. So I'm just trying to find out where this gap come from. I'm not sure if you have this picture now. This is coming from last year. This is what you show us last year. And this is the picture, the projections. So you can see the right line here is in the middle. That's our tax based on budgetings. We are in the middle. And also the top one, we are far away from there. If you're familiar with this chart. So looks like from budgeting and projection perspective, we are far away because we are short of budgeting. So we need to find more money. But from the result, looks like we have more surplus. I'm just seeing what's going on there. If you have more answers for me.
Through the chair to Councillor Tree, so I do want to point out the graph that you were just showing is specific to tax-supported capital reserve fund, as well as is the CAS levy, which is the capital asset sustainability levy, and not so much tying to the operating budget. Like we're talking about the capital budget and the contributions and the expenses that are projected for a tax-supported program versus in this presentation, I'm talking about the operating budget results for 2024, the operating budget.
So for the capital, we're short with them, but for the operation, we have some surplus. Is that what I understand correct? Because last year, our resident asked me for a few big project based on the project, based on budget, capital budget. It looks like I see the chart. I told them, oh, we have some kind of short of fundings just from capital. But from operation perspective, we do have a years and years surplus. So is there any kind of balance in between? So can we shifting some surplus from operation to capital instead? That's my question.
Counselor, you're really talking about two very, very different things. We're talking about shortfalls in our 10-year projected needs for our assets. Our capital projections of what we need, we're probably going to have a shortfall, but the money that funds are those assets is not all tax related. It's very different from the operating budget that we're discussing today. And the surplus, I just want to say, is less than 1%. We're 99% accurate when we're predicting where we're going to be and where we end up. It's $212 million total budget, and to be within 1 or 2 million it's not a great surplus or deficit. It's just today's exercises to what we do with that. You could probably do a much better job. I'll pass it to you, Madam Treasurer.
Through the chair to Councillor Tree. So I would add that when we're looking at the operating budget, the surplus goes back to what we call a tax rate stabilization, which is used to fund any fluctuations in tax rate within the operating budget. Okay, on the capital side, which I think will be a little bit more clear once I go through the second presentation, because it does have a similar slide to yours, which highlights the tax-supported reserve funds and the 10-year outlook.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'll wait for the incoming slides. So another question here is, I know because every year, end of year, when we review our budgeting, we got tons of complaints from residents. We reserve too much. So I know we need to save certain of the monies for future, for emergencies, for whatever reasons, for reserve. So is there any buffers we can just shifting a little bit? I know it's only 1%, even less than 1%, maybe 0.5% of the beyond our expected budgeting. I'm just questioning, if we do have certain of the reserves, is there any way we can shifting a little bit to lower down the in future property tax? That's my thought. Yeah. Please consider all that, because this is in the year, a third year with 4 pounds, 6 pounds, 7 pounds, something like the property tax. I think everybody has every family has struggles as well, especially during this time, and a lot of business being impacted. There are a lot of pressures for everybody. So I'm just looking for all the council support, also for our staff members support. Is there any way we can just lower down the property tax in the future a little bit and ease it up a little bit if we have enough reserve and also fundings here? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And essentially, your motion here, the staff recommendation is doing just that, or suggesting to do just that, and to transfer the bulk of this the surplus to tax rate stabilization reserve, which we're trying to get to 10% of our operating budget, which is roughly $20 million, and we're there, and it's a real achievement, a real accomplishment that we've got that reserve healthy again, and very important as we go forward to make sure we're safeguarding against future tax increases when there's unforeseen circumstances. So, very comfortable that we're going, that the recommendation is to go back to tax rate stabilization reserve, because that's future protection against tax increases for our residents. The next speaker I have is Councillor Hsu. Yes, Councillor Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And firstly, thank you for this staff report. And I'm glad to see there was a surplus in overall last year. I think it's not just like by the excellent management by Treasurer Lee and your team. Appreciate that. Just a few questions, not harsh. On slide number 5, the biggest negative contributor is personnel gapping. As mentioned, it's not related to QP strike last year, and it's only about the overtime by fire, IT matters, like you mentioned before. My question is, do you think this issue can be easily addressed in the coming years? And if it's only happened last year, or it may be happen in the next few years, I'm just concerned about this. Is it easily be addressed? Through Mr. Chair.
Through the chair to Councillor Xu, it is something that is being looked at and managed. So definitely specific to some of the, within personal gapping, you just spoke to the overtime as well as the shift premiums related to firefighters. So these are things that we staff are looking into, hoping to address, but definitely there's some complication in that as well. So all I can say right now is these items are definitely ones that staff have identified and that we'll have to further investigate and look into.
Okay. Similar questions on slide number 9. Oh, sorry, 8. The negative variance. We have a significant deficit this year, over $3 million in the water and wastewater category, due to the several water main projects. So the similar questions, do you think this issue could be easily addressed in the coming years? Through Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So first off, I think it's important to consider that there's a difference between the projection being off and an actual problem related to like something that's caused an expense. So we need to consider those two things. And when we're reviewing and trying to be more accurate in future years, we need to consider both of those things. If you're looking for information specifically about the water and wastewater deficit, I would, is there a more specific question?
Actually, I'm quite surprised by the significant deficit in this account, water and wastewater. So my question is, could it be easily addressed, or it will happen in the coming years, again and again? That's my simple questions.
Right. So through your, like I was saying, we would be working certainly to make our budget predictions more accurate. If you're looking to know what specifically caused the deficit this year, that's the bullets that are listed on the bottom of the slide there.
Okay, so actually compared to the balance in the water rate reserve fund, does this deficit of over $3 million represent a significant portion of the outstanding balance of the reserve? I'm just concerned about how much we have in the reserve, and for over $3 million deficit, if it will have a big impact on our reserve. That's my question through Mr. Chair.
Through the chair to Councillor Xu. So prior to the 2024 year-end results, we had a balance of $12 million.
Okay, so it's a 1 quarter, $3 million deficit this year out of $12 million is 1 quarter of our reserve. Okay, that's my answer I want to ask. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Silovitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our treasurer and her staff and all departments who work on this. As I second what Councillor Xu was saying, superb work as always. I just have a couple of questions. On slide 5, negative contributors. Vehicle and equipment maintenance, through you, Mr. Chair. Do we lease or purchase our vehicles? And does that make a difference in how we may have to maintain them? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have a combination of both. We lease some vehicles and we purchase many of our vehicles. We are actually looking at currently right now how to optimize the level and whether we have the optimal division between the two. And it does make some level of difference between how we maintain them, yes.
Right. Okay, thank you. It was just a query inside my head. Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Through you, Mr. Chair, is there ever a point in time where we look at our vehicles and we say the fleet needs to be replaced? Or is that something that happens over time?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we don't look at it collectively as the entire fleet. We have each vehicle individually is an asset in our asset management database with a life cycle. And when that life cycle comes up, we assess whether it needs to be replaced and put it in the capital budget for replacement.
Okay, great. Thank you. That helps me. Thank you. And then my second and last question through you, Mr. Chair, is the next line down, library deficit funded from city grant, 136.6. I didn't quite understand that. Treasurer Lee, can you explain that again? My apologies, but I just didn't quite get that.
Through the chair to Councillor Solifit, so on an annual basis, as part of the operating budget, the city does provide a municipal grant to the library to fund a majority of their operations. So what happened in 2024 was as a result of the QP collective agreement, so the actual increases versus the budgeted increases, as well as the transition with the former CEO to the new CEO, we did experience overall a deficit in the library's operating budget. So you can imagine for the city, when there's a surplus or deficit, we have the tax rate stabilization reserve. In this case, the recommendation from staff is that we increase a one-time grant of $136,000 in addition to the municipal grant, so that they will not have a deficit. It's one time in nature, and I would say in the history of the library's operations, I would say this is actually the first time we've experienced, and due to the reasons I've noted earlier.
An anomaly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I needed to know. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor West.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. I want to talk a little bit about the tax rate stabilization reserve because I think it's maybe a little misunderstood, and I suspect that maybe people in the public don't fully understand it. But I wonder if you could just add a little bit to that narrative. Can you just remind me and everybody else on council, what have been the general trends in the tax rate stabilization account over the last, maybe going back to the beginning of last term of council? Like how is that, what would that graph look like in terms of the balances on the tax rate, generally speaking, the tax rate stabilization reserve?
Through the chair to the mayor, so I do have data going back to 2020, which would be the previous council. In 2020, our opening balance was $6.8 million. And then 2021, 6.7. So over the last few years, through some of the opportunities that we've had with the surpluses, with some of the funding that we got through COVID from the higher level governments, as well as the investment income, it helped us repopulate and improve and increase that balance. To the chair's earlier point, we do have an internal guideline of 10% over operating. I noted our annual operating for 2024 was 212. So 10% of that would be $21 million. So since 2020, we have been able to increase that tax rate stabilization reserve from 6.8 to the $18.4 million with the recommendations that staff has provided for the transfer of the 2024 surplus.
Okay, so when did it hit 18.4?
With this, with the staff report,
As
so
of-
at the end of 2024,
Okay,
with the transfer, we would hit 18.4 before any draws or any transactions in 25.
okay. So, and the important thing I think it's important to remember too is before the 2020 timeframe that you have the data for, we were using the tax rate stabilization account to artificially, I'm using that in air quotes, but artificially lower the tax rate almost every year since I've been on council. And we did that for a number of reasons, but the thing is that made the balance in the tax rate stabilization account go down, not up. And the reason that we have the tax rate stabilization account is that if we have any sort of a major unexpected expenditure, which we could, and in my time on council, I know the ice storm, hit in 2013, I guess, early 2014. And if I'm not mistaken, that cost us about $6 or $7 million that wasn't budgeted for because we had no idea that was going to happen. Had we not had a stabilization reserve, then what would have happened is the taxes would have gone up in the next tax year, $6 million that it costs us. So this reserve fund helps us to even out some of the unexpected things that might happen. And so I think it's really important. And I'm sure that this particular move on our part isn't the most flashy thing when it comes to the budget. Like, it's not going to be the headline in the story, but I think it really is the foundation of one of the many things that we do in the city of Richmond Hill around really sound fiscal planning. It's essentially money, not for, well, actually it is kind of money for a rainy day, but I'm talking about climate change rainy. Like if we had a really big flood or something like that happened, we could count on this reserve fund to make the repairs quickly, and have it not impact directly the tax rate for the next budget. So that's the important thing. So it's taken us a long time to wean ourselves off the temptation to use it, but also to get us back to a place where the balance in that account is high enough that we can count on it to be useful. And that's where we are today. So using fiscal prudence and using some of the surpluses, which we didn't obviously expect, and as Chair DiPaolo mentioned, some of the successes that we've had with some of the investment that we have to replenish that account so that we're back to a place of more sound financial position. So I think that's really important. Is there anything else, Treasurer Lee, that we have used the tax rate stay for in the last few years? Like, I mean, I'm not looking at little bits and pieces, but is there anything else other than the ice storm that stands out in its recent use?
Through the chair to Mayor West. So over the last little while, we have been occasionally using this reserve for one-time items. So I can talk to the Community Improvement Program grant. So that's $350,000 that we're drawing from the tax rate stabilization to for that grant program. We do have some internal core services reviews, some within my sections. We talked a couple meetings ago about some of the continuous improvement projects. So there's also a one-time budget to pay, which is a one-time program that we're using the tax rate stabilization to provide for.
And all of those programs are creating dividends
That's correct.
for our city as well. So anyway, I just think, I think it's important for us to understand this, that, getting the tax rate stabilization account to a level, I mean, it's not going to grow forever. We're not going to, keep putting money into it until it's, 20 or 30 or 40% of our budget. But it's an amount of money that we can count on to be able to leverage and use when we need it. So, sorry, did you want to say something?
Through the chair, if I can just add one more point. The mayor's correct. Like, we have been able to take the opportunities over the last couple of years to help build up the reserve. But as we know, the Bank of Canada interest rate it's almost half of what it was a year ago, right? So things are going to change. And this is why it's important that we do have that buffer, or we do have the flexibility within the reserve for any unexpected changes going, in the near future.
Right. But, I'm touching wood as I'm saying this. If we don't get a disaster between now and, say, the next budget, or the budget after that, or the budget after that, next year's conversation here probably won't include a substantial contribution to the rate stabilization reserve, because we're we're getting very close to the target of 20-point-something million dollars. But when we were having the conversation and the tax rate stable account was only $6 million or 6.8 versus today, there's, there was a whole lot more urgency to get us back to where we needed to be. Now we can kind of, take our foot off the gas pedal a little bit because we are roughly, at our destination. So anyway, that wasn't, that was just the only thing I specifically had to ask. I thank you for all the work that you do and your staff, Gigi, because I think, we're very lucky to have such a thorough analysis of the budget documents. And this report specifically is a very interesting one because it kind of says how we did. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Chan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to begin with I guess all of us who have spoken said that. Thank you so much for the great work been doing year after year. I've been sitting in council 19th year. My recollection is almost every year at the end of the looking back is almost we always have a surplus, whether it's big or small. So this is a plus. As mentioned about, it's 99% on track. This is great. Now I'm just curious. I know that was talking about only 1%. How's that $2 million of surplus? If we had put in a tax points, what would that be? Through you, Mr. Chair, roughly.
Roughly 1.5%, 1.5%, yeah,
1.5%.
roughly.
Okay. So, like personally, it's not, the amount may be small, but if you look at that way, percentage-wise, 1.5% is quite a bit. But of course, we cannot predict year after year. And today we are not talking about moving forward, but looking back. But potentially in the future, we can look at, given, I think Council Tree kind of touching on, if you look at 3-year, 5-year, even 10-year record, we consistently perform well and outperform as projected. Perhaps there may be a little bit of cushion to look at in the future, but that's for another time. Now, coming back to what we have in 2024, it's great we have all those positive contributors. Now, what my concern is, I'd like to hear the thoughts from our treasurer, through you, Mr. Chair. Some of the positive contributors, we kind of thought is a one-time only, last year or even year before last. And specifically is one on the York Regional Transit, their payment in lieu of taxes. And well, it's fortunate for us, we keep getting it, the 600 gram or so on. Is there any sense that, through you, Mr. Chair, to the treasurer, you would know or anticipate that might change in the years to come? Or hard to say, we'd like to hear that, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Chen. So you are correct in that the payment in lieu of taxes, that favorable variance has been a recurring item over the last few years. Reason being, there are ongoing discussions between the region and the province to make regulatory changes to exempt the facility from property taxes. So that discussion has been ongoing for a number of years. Every year we do a follow-up with the region. That is still the status. So we don't want to include this in the budget because, next year or the year after it could be gone. So we want to make sure we're conservative. So that's why we continue to report. It is a good news story. We continue to benefit from it. But we don't know when that's going to change because, as I mentioned earlier, is a discussion between the province and the region that are continuing.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that is fortunate for City of Richmond Hill for over a few years' time. We always, well, I say always, we have been getting that $618,000, but potentially it might be gone, in next year or year after. I don't know is something that can we touch on maybe in the next item or the general items. It's good to have $309,000 more money from the refuse collection and recycling contracts, but potentially that positive variance favorable to us might not necessarily be there from 2026 and beyond. I'm just saying that I don't need any comments. So the point I'm trying to get at is great. We have all these positive contributions this time, but in a good number of them, we cannot really rely on them. And I think that's goes to show that our team again have to really do their best to provide some room for accommodate those potentially non-recurring, if I may say so, positive contributions. I just want to clarify certain things, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in full support, and always good to have surplus. And I have no trouble that money go to the tax, the stability, stabilization fund. Actually, before I still have time, I just forgot one thing. It's about the WSIB. I've been talking to my municipal colleagues. They all seem to be saying that this could be a potential major thing to consider. I wonder to the extent that you could comment through Mr. Chair. Last year, we're fortunate, so to speak, but is that something it could give us some sense that we have to look for, maybe have the budget for more money coming year, WSIB?
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Chan. So this is something the staff has identified since the 2022 actuarial review. And we are doing an update of the valuation in 2025. So definitely it's an area that staff are looking into. I do want to point out that since the 2022 actuarial review, we have been increasing within the budget. We have been gradually increasing the contribution to WSIB. So we're not just looking at when there's a surplus, let's transfer them. So within the budget process itself, we have identified that, and year over year, we have been adding those contributions to make sure we are able to bridge that gap. But as I mentioned earlier, in Q4 of this year, we are going to be undertaking an updated actuarial review and evaluation. So an update on where things stand and how we would move forward.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can see we have to keep that reserve healthy because I can see that coming in the years to come. But for last year, good news, good news, good news. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you for all the hard work. Just very quick, I apologize if you have already explained the staircase repairs on Saigon Trail. Is $100,000. It's got my attention. Is it considered expensive to just for staircases? Staircase? I'm just curious, through you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the reason this is listed is because it was not anticipated in our forecast of operations and maintenance needs. It was something that came up. So that's why it's an additional deficit over a threshold value that we use to report things of significance. So it's not out of the ordinary. It was just that it wasn't, we didn't forecast that we were going to need to be, we were going to need to do it in 2024, and then we did. So it's coming out as a deficit cost.
No, I understand. I'm just curious about why this is so expensive.
Okay, so through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think it's unusual. It's a pretty significant staircase, and it needed to be totally replaced because it was dangerous.
Okay, all right. Because when I look at page 6 at $84,000 for sidewalk repairs and $100,000 for a staircase, it just caught my attention. So it is what it is. Okay, fine. Next question is page 6, accelerated programs. So this is when we have surplus and then we decided to accelerate these 3 projects to have it complete ahead of time. Is it my correct understanding?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, that is correct. So through our mid-year operating forecast process in 2024, We did identify and anticipate a surplus amount. So then we did recommend through that process to accelerate some of these programs, which you see on slide 6. So those were recommended and approved so that we were able to undertake those projects in 2024 instead of 2025.
Okay. And it was approved by council, right? I can see that.
Correct.
All right, so, all right, thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other speakers or questions at this time. Well, I just want to speak briefly to the motion on the floor. I really think it's very prudent to the recommendations of our staff where we're going to direct the surplus funds. It was noted that WSIB is a deficient account, and we're catching up there. And then, of course, it was already mentioned by the mayor about the mill rate stabilization, and we've tripled the real number of the balance in just 3 years into that account, and we're not going to have to do that in the future. We're almost at the target, so that's going to give us a lot of flexibility should we again, have an opportunity to have a surplus. I actually have a question. How much did we budget to contribute to mill rate stabilization for 2024? There's a budget amount. This is in excess of, or do we budget for that?
Through to the chair, we did budget an amount in 2024, and that's because we did anticipate a higher than usual investment income. So at the time when we were doing the budget for 24, we did anticipate roughly that we would transfer $3 million, which is entirely related to short-term investment income. So that was in the budget.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, yeah, so this additional $1 million is, in excess of what we budgeted, and we had an opportunity to do that. And the next time we anticipate getting $3 million extra, that's not going to be the target. It'll be something else. So we're in a good position, and a lot of it is things that you just don't see, and being careful with the funds that we have and keeping these reserves healthy makes us not have to come together as a council to deal with things that could be a crisis. Our wastewater, there's no way of anticipating. We had excess flushing. We had to clean out our systems. We had to use water for that. There's leakages that are being repaired and being addressed, but we pay a certain amount for water, and the region bills us for how much water they give us, and we collect how much we pass on to our residents and users, and we're on the hook for the difference. So instead of assembling in a panic or as a crisis, that $1 million we don't even it's just a line in a presentation rather than a real concern, and that's what it would be if our mill rate stabilization accounts, our reserve accounts were not healthy. We'd be in here every day saying, "Oh no, the strike cost us $600,000, and WSIB needs another $1 million, and wastewater needs $1 million." We'd be going from crisis to crisis if we didn't have that good management that we're fortunate that our staff is always looking ahead and budgeting. So I congratulate you for that. A good year for 2024, and then I have a question about 2025. When we do that mid-year analysis, is that June or September? When we look at where we stand and maybe have accelerated projects?
To the chair, so that process takes place in September. So we would come back at the September BCW Budget Committee of the Whole with the mid-year forecast based on June results to 2025 year end.
Okay, very good. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So September, we're going to take a look at what's happening this year, where we stand, And then, it's a very critical year as we go forward with the budget. My hope is to really give our residents a break if we can. I know so many people are struggling. They're getting hit on in everywhere they turn with rising costs of living and, life becoming more and more unaffordable. And we just don't want the property tax bill to be another hit for them. So with this year, we have a real view to trying to keep, our property tax rate hike as low as absolutely possible. I think this term of council that we've done a really good job managing, and we should be in the position to perhaps, relative to other municipalities, help our residents with a very modest tax increase versus what they may be experiencing elsewhere and other municipalities are going through. So that's where we stand. I think, Councillor Tree, you wanted a second round? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So I do want to comment, follow up the wastewater and also the stormwater, the data here. I remember last year we had tons of discussion regarding to the stormwaters and back and forth, and also the residents, farmers come back to us as well. So my questions here, based on the 2025, maybe refresh my knowledge and understanding for stormwater based on last year's adjustment. So far for 2024, we're okay. For long term, next 5 years, do we see any major deficits here, or do we see any major changes here? I forgot because this is really half a year ago. I need to refresh my memory. For stormwater part, we keep the current approved ratios for next few years. Is there anything you can see is quite different or similar as this now?
Through the chair to Councillor Tree. So in November of last year, Council approved the Stormwater Management Financial Plan. That essentially is a financial plan that covers the needs, the city's needs when it comes to stormwater infrastructure for the next 10 years. So within that financial plan, it identifies the infrastructure needs, the operating costs, as well as the projected stormwater management rates that are required to support this program. So that was also approved. With respect to the changes, every year in April, that's when the water, wastewater, as well as stormwater rates increase. So in April of this year, we also started billing at the 2025 rates. With respect to the structure, that was approved. We did have a couple rounds up until the November before last. So we do have a rate structure that's been approved by council and in place.
Okay. My next question regarding the water and the wastewater budget. I see this is really the big deficit, $2.4 million here. So I still have same question as well. So I know last year we approved certain of the motions carry forward to balance this water budget. I remember one of the consultants come here to have had a meeting with us as well for the report regarding watering. So from your understanding, is water and wastewater, are we still short of the deficits? Is there any good long term we still need more monies to meet this objective, just from the water and wastewater perspective? Are we still seeing deficits in next few years too?
I think that was answered. We've got a plan going forward. We're trying to get more accurate.
Yeah, that's right. I just see the status.
Through the chair to Councillor Tree, so I'll share a very similar response to what I just mentioned for stormwater. So essentially, council did approve last June the water and wastewater financial plan. Again, it identified the infrastructure investments that are needed, the operating costs, as well as the 10-year projection of those rates. We're still on track, and I would say That is the function of the water rate stabilization, similar to the tax rate, right? When we have a surplus, we would transfer it in. When there's a need to find a deficit, we would, so that is the function of the reserve. For the most part, I would say that the deficit, it's one time in nature.
Mhm.
We're definitely looking at managing the budget and looking at what other opportunities we have in 2025 and moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So we're just, because it's the middle of the year, so we're just trying to see the updates and see how that goes. And we can keep monitoring the progress, and hopefully after a few years, this can be balanced out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, so we have to remember that we're talking about variances here. We budget to be impacted by all these different areas. The water and wastewater is a big line item. That it's a flow through the region. We administer the accounting on it. We pay for the water, then we sell it to our residents, and it's just large amounts. So there's going to be year after year that'll be one of the largest items, plus or minus, and that's going to happen. But I think overall these variances are excellent because they're so accurate when you consider that they're with 99% accurate of what we're going to spend. But the variance is on the positive side because of that conservative approach. The fact that we're not counting on the region paying property taxes when we know they're in negotiations to get relief from the province. The fact, just in each and every line item, it's to be as accurate as possible, but to err on the conservative side and make sure that we're not here facing a deficit and wondering where we're going to find $2 million instead of today where we've got a budget from a motion from Councillor Tree to allocate $2+ million to the recommended funds. So with that, a motion on the floor, all in favor? Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, thank you very much. Now we move to the next item, and it's curious that there isn't a presentation on this one. There should be I think our financial staff's pretty humble, not to be bragging and boasting with charts. I would be I'd have a big chart showing how well they did with our investment income portfolio, but it's just here in front of us as an item for information purposes, and we're nearing 10% on the mark-to-market amount, or a portfolio, the 5.5% return on. It's just good news that can't be expected to continue, but good news, and big part of the reason why we're in a positive variance favorable position today. So is there someone willing to move that receipt of that information? Councillor Tree, okay. Any discussion? Oh, yes, I've moved to 5.2 now, so. And the scheduled business, oh, go ahead. Yeah, Deputy Mayor Chan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was anticipating a presentation too, so I'm hesitant to raise my hand. And I know we are only setting directions, and there's so much thing might be within our control, less than our control. Just to be very clear, Mr. Chair, has a motion as stated on the report SRCFS 25.17 been moved, the recommendation been moved already, is that correct?
We've got him, yep, the
Okay.
motion on the floor to receive.
Okay, so,
Sorry, I think through the chair, I think we're referring to two different agenda items.
I'm sorry, yeah.
We're on the
sorry,
investment one, which is
sorry,
the
my
5.2.
my apology, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested in the other one coming up later. Thank you. Sorry, I withdraw my request to speak.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let us know when you're ready. So, yeah, we're on 5.2 in the scheduled business. We've got a motion on the floor to receive the investment portfolio results. Any questions on those? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, so item 5.3. Now we have a presentation up to 20 minutes from our treasurer regarding our capital and operating budget strategy going forward. Take it away.
Thank you. This second presentation will focus on the upcoming budget cycle, identified in Agenda Item 5.3. The objectives of the agenda item are highlighted on the slide. I'm here to provide the budget timelines for the 2026 budget process, highlighting some of the anticipated budget pressures the city will face, and also to seek the committee's approval on the staff recommended guidelines and strategy for the 2026 capital, operating, as well as rate budgets. As we know, strong mayor powers for Richmond Hill came into effect back in 2023 in July, and the city undertook 2 budgets already under these new legislative changes. To comply with the Municipal Act, the mayor has directed staff to commence on the 2026 budget process via his mayoral decision shown on the slide, specifically balancing the financial pressures on the city, including the need to build and maintain infrastructure and to continue to deliver important services. The direction also directs staff to review spending and finding efficiencies to ensure financial prudence and to ensure alignment with the city's strategic plan. Furthermore, to continue with the process of consulting with the Budget Committee of the whole on the preparation of the draft 2026 capital and operating budgets for deliberation in the fall. To that end, the mayor has directed staff to continue to work collaboratively with all stakeholders, including gathering input from members of council, staff, and the public, and to follow the processes that are generally conform with previous business practices, as well as the provisions of the Act. The timelines for the 2026 budget and other financial processes are shown in this table. The 2026 budget strategy is being presented today, followed by the 2026 user fees review and update in June. In September, staff will present the preliminary results of the budget engagement, as well as we talked about this in the earlier presentation, the interim financial results or the operating forecast for 2025. In November, staff will present the proposed budget to the Budget Committee for deliberation and recommendation to the mayor, and the mayor will then table the 2026 budget on December 10th. As endorsed by council through recommendations of the 2025 Budget Survey Results Report, any future budget engagements will continue with an online survey to solicit feedback, in addition to promoting the budget and its overall process through various digital and social media channels. An online survey will be launched by the end of May and will remain open for 3 weeks, focusing on key themes from the budget direction. The results will then be shared with Budget Committee of the whole in September, allowing for considerations ahead of the 2026 budget discussions. The city's capital budget and forecast is a continuous and annual process. We're always looking at the next 10-year horizon. We'll continue to utilize the funding envelope approach to ensure financial sustainability. The capital budget will be informed by the asset management plan, other master plans and studies, along with the recently adopted rate-supported financial plans to invest in the city's infrastructure. We'll continue to prioritize capital projects based on a matrix that factors in strategic priorities, regulatory needs, as well as asset management risk assessment. And we'll identify immediate capital investments needed with the goal to provide council with insights into the longer-term capital requirements. The funding envelopes are shown in the table on the slide, with more details on the upcoming slides. Staff developed a tax-supported funding envelope by analyzing the projected expenditures based on the 2025 capital budget forecast, indexing it to mimic the annual non-residential construction building price index. With a cap of $34.5 million, staff forecasting a positive reserve fund balance throughout the capital forecast period. So I do want to point out, this was the slide that was shared by Councillor Treat earlier that highlights the gap in the tax-supported funding for capital. As mentioned earlier, for rate-supported capital, the strategy will be to follow the principles of the water, wastewater, as well as stormwater management financial plans. So as you can see, we've highlighted the envelope amount based on the work that we've done through the financial plan process, and these are going to be the envelopes or the upset limit of what we will include in the capital budget. For growth-related capital, staff are proposing funding envelopes similar to what we did last year to acknowledge the residual impact of Bill 23 and 185, as well as the lower than anticipated growth. Recent trend does suggest DC applications will be less than the growth forecast due to the rising construction costs, shortage of workers, and the high interest rate environment. The capital program will be evaluated with these factors in mind, and the timing of growth-related projects will need to be realigned. Identifying some of the potential challenges that may affect the city's ability to implement its capital plan, as well as to sustain infrastructure development and maintenance. So what you see on the slide is we've highlighted some potential challenges, including limited financial resources, any emergent needs and external circumstances. So over the last little while, we have been hearing a lot about U.S. imposed tariffs and the potential impact. And then last but not least, a shift in political landscape can create some uncertainty for external financing. Over the last little while, we have heard of some of the higher level governments and their platforms. And for the most part, they have been discussing consideration of reduction in DCs, which will impact the DC collections for the city and our ability to deliver on capital. Turning our minds to the operating budget, what's shown on this slide is the 2026 outlook that was provided as part of the 2025 budget, and a comparison with the approved tax rate and budget for 2024 as well as 2025. Appendix C from the staff report presents the financial outlook prepared as part of the process, which outlines the financial pressures from the various cost categories. It reflects the need to sustain service levels while addressing budget pressures, wage settlements, rising commodity costs, as well as property assessment growth. Staff aim to manage costs through fiscal responsibility and operational efficiencies to reduce the 2026 tax rate increase. As well, in order to keep in line with the budget direction and propose the budget below the 2026 outlook, vacant positions will be considered for repurposing where possible in lieu of new staffing requests. This slide highlights some of the impact considerations for the upcoming operating budget. As you can see, both internal impact as well as external, these will all in some way impact the results or the draft operating budget that will be presented. As always, staff have identified a list of mitigating measures and will continue to add to the list throughout the budget process where possible. So as you can see, I think this goes back to some of the comments that were made in the earlier presentation. We're looking to align budgets with some of our 2024 actual experiences and financial trends. I talked about the vacant positions earlier. So again, any one-time budget impacts, we'll utilize the tax rate stabilization reserve for. We'll continue to look at the phasing in of the investment income strategy, along with potentially prolonging the impact or the phase-in impact of the Public Works Enhancement Program, as well as the new firefighters that were added in 2020. We'll always look to maximize revenue opportunities through cost recovery. And then, as always, reviewing city operations for service level and process changes, and really just looking at, again, at any opportunity to generate savings and efficiencies. Similar to the capital budget strategy that I noted earlier, the rate budget strategy will be to follow the principles of the water, wastewater, as well as the stormwater managed financial plans and the rates that are identified within. So you see that on the slide. Chair DiPaola, that brings me to the recommendations of the report over this slide and the next, and that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. So again, very early outlook at what we're going to be facing in 2026. We've got a long way to go, but thank you for that presentation. Are there questions on the presentation? Deputy Mayor Chan.
Thank you very much. I agree with you, Mr. Chair. It's still a long way to go, but we always do it usually in June. Actually, we are early this year compared to other budget cycle. And I appreciate the treasurer setting out, all the things considered. And I'll be remiss if not saying that appreciate Mayor West, because this is opportunity, as one of the slides mentioned, that for the mayor to take into consideration of the recommendation from this budget committee of the whole at the end. So it's always a balancing act, no doubt about that. Looking specifically, I think there is a number, slide number 23. Oh no, sorry, maybe that's from last. Okay, it is. That shows actually operating budget outlook. That I like this one because it sets out in a 3-year span what has been some of the changes. Now, of course, we have to wait till this time next year to look at how the actual variance for 2025 budget. But I do understand, like this year, the tax rate increase is the lowest among the 3 years. Well, it's shown on here. And if it's appropriate, Mr. Chair, that is that tuition to move the recommendations at this point in time?
Yes.
It was in one of the slides, right? Yes. So I would like to move the recommendation, and I believe it's on slide, there's no numbers, but last 2 pages anyway. But with my colleague's indulgence, I would like to propose to add under C, additional clause 7. If I can read it out, propose a tax rate increase target, that's the word, of 3%, excluding the capital asset sustainability levy. Now, if people say, is this new? No, certainly not new. The very first budget of this term, on June 27, 2023, this clause was passed at that time, the budget committee of the whole. June 27, 2023. And I hope, now it doesn't really tie our hands in any way. It come in 2.5 or 3.1, whatever. But in my view, and also Chair DePaul also mentioned, it is really a tough time for a lot of residents as well. So I think setting a target, and of course, we'll see how in the end, whether in fact that can be fulfilled or not, but sets out what the direction we would like to go. So in that regard, that's my motion, including clause C7, which is the same identical wording as was adopted by the Budget Committee of the whole back in June 23rd, 2023. Thank you.
So there's motion on the floor then. Other speakers, Mayor West, you're next.
I wish that Regional Local Councillor Chan had bothered to talk to me about his plan to do this, but that's, I guess, what it is. So the whole idea here with this process that we've set out was that if you read the the mayoral direction that I'm required to do, that's the only part of the strong mayor powers that I'm actually legally needing to exercise. It says that we're going to be basically looking for the lowest tax rate possible. And I actually would like to see it even lower than 3%. But as you said at the very beginning, we are in a long process right now, and there's lots of different pressures and things that we have. So doing this right now is not tying anybody's hands, but there's no value to it. I mean, the idea here is that we're going to try to get the budget increase as low as we possibly can. So in a lot of ways, I believe this is micromanaging the staff. And I mean, it doesn't matter, I suppose, in a way, whether we pass this or whether we don't pass this. But what I would say is that the intention of this process, which we've engaged in good faith with the council and the rest of the community, at the very beginning of this is to find out exactly what it is that the community needs, what the council hears from the community, and then we will go forward with the lowest tax rate increase that we possibly can. But at this point in time, I don't see that clause number 7 actually puts a lot of value to it, and it kind of changes the conversation as to how we're going about, because really what we're looking to do here is to get it as low as possible. Putting a number to it right now doesn't really add anything to the conversation. So that wasn't what I was planning on talking about, but given the time that we have left, the process that we have in place here, I just want to be clear. I really do value what members of the public and what members of this council bring to the table throughout the mayoral process, or through the budget process. So using the strong mayor powers, I want to just assure everybody that the process will still be the same as we've always had before. I mean, we're streamlining it and we're making it more efficient and getting our budget approved much earlier than we have been in the past. And this is improvements that we've made since the beginning of this council. But we do need to make sure that we're maintaining the service, given the challenges that we're facing, and frankly, the challenges that people are facing in our community that we hear about all the time with regards to affordability. So I think that's really important, that we make sure that we are putting together as close to the bone as we possibly can in terms of a tax rate that we're charging and the tax rate increase that we may be passing along. But at the same time, we're also delivering the kinds of services that we need to have in our community, because people do expect excellent services, and so they should in Richmond Hill. So we need to continue to do that. And we've also, it's interesting in one of the slides and with the strategic plan comment that was made in the third part of the mayoral direction, all of the plans that we have in place are built around a very significant amount of public consultation. So these are the roadmaps of the things that people have told us when we've talked to them in depth about the strategic plan, about the parks plan, about the environment plan, about the any of the plans that we have that guide this process, what's important to them. So this budget needs to reflect all of that as well. And again, given the challenges that we have with tariffs, with frankly, a lot of underfunding that we're advocating to make better with other levels of government, and so on and so on and so on. So that's why I would prefer to have had this motion the way it was presented, and let staff go out and do the things that they're doing. Come back with us, and we're hearing from residents on a daily basis about the things that they need, and then we come back and we're going to work as hard as we possibly can to get this as low as we possibly can. So that would be my recommendation. Given what we have before us, I'm not sure how we do that, but regardless of whether, whatever happens, that is what I am planning on seeing us do throughout this process. So thank you very much. Oh, and just finally, I just want to say thank you to Regional Local Councillor DiPaolo for his role in helping to shepherd this process through. You've done a good job, Councillor, in the last number of years, and I really do appreciate that being brought to the table too, because I know that you're always keeping an eye to make sure that the budget increases are as low as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Davidson, you're next.
Thank you. Can I speak about the presentation or just about the amendment proposal? The amendment only?
No, it's not.
It's not an amendment, so a
Oh.
motion on the floor,
Oh,
and
Oh, a motion.
you're absolutely, you can ask questions too.
Oh, okay. Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I do want to say, I think it is premature to put a number in any of these documents, because even if we make it or don't make it, it sets up an expectation that we're not in a position to guess. And whatever we did in June of 2024, the whole world is different. And I mean, just look at the fluctuations and nobody knows what's really going to happen. So I personally think I agree with the mayor, we should let staff go out, come back, tell us what we need. And that 3% number is also confusing to residents because it's never just what we want. It's also the region and education, and it ends up being, it sets up false expectations, in my opinion. So I would like to keep it without that number on there. My only other well, I have two comments. One is through you, Mr. Chair. I think the online consultation is a great idea. I did pop in on the in-person ones. They're not well attended. And I don't think it's a big secret that if any resident had a question, they can ask finance folks directly through email or through access. Any specific questions a resident has can be addressed. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Davidson, and I would add that it's at any time, not just during the budget process.
Right. So anyone who has a question about finance, budgets, tax rates, please reach out to the city and have your questions answered personally and directly. My last one is always this graph that I can never understand, tax supported funding, the bar graph. And so is the red thin line what we're going to bring in through property taxes? What's the red line? I don't have a number on this slide. Do you know the one I mean? The bar, yeah. So I never understand, like the way yes, this one. So what exactly is the red line?
So the red line is the 1.5% contribution. So as you saw on the earlier slide, aside from the tax rate increase, we also have a dedicated fee, which is called the CAS levy. That's 1.5% on an annual basis. So the red line identifies the increase year after year. So we're gradually increasing the contribution to the reserve funds. And we're also, when you look at the bars, those are the expenditures. So that's the capital that we're funding. So what this graph really tells you is we need to continue with the 1.5%, as well as managing our capital plan so that we can prolong the life of the reserve, which is the peach. So you see it doesn't go below zero because we're stretching it to make sure that we're able to fund the program. We're adding contribution. Now, you can see that it's declining, but within the next 10 years, we're not depleting the reserve.
And forgive my lack of math skills through you, Mr. Chair. So the difference between the red line, for example, in 2025, the dot in the middle of the bar graph of 34 million, what's making up that difference between the dot and is
The
that
top
the
of the
reserve
green?
fund?
That's the,
Okay,
through the
so-
chair, that's correct.
Right, so anything above the red line, we're going to make up that shortfall with the reserve fund, which is why the reserve fund is going down.
That's correct.
And we can't really operate properly without using the reserve fund and using all the things we have here. Okay, I finally understand it, but I bet you it's momentary. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, so Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And actually, Councillor Davidson actually coined exactly how I felt about, setting a target as well. But, perhaps it would be best if we just find out, a question to Councillor Chan is, where did you come up or how did you come up with that 3% target? Was that based on some form of research or a gut feeling or, I'm just curious why we would want to do that. Because to me, I agree with the mayor, this is going to handcuff our staff to try and work within a certain parameter when really they should just be working towards what makes the most sense for the city.
Thank you very much for the question. Good question. When I stress target, and I did say, you can play the tape again, in no way tying our hands. And I did even say maybe it's 2.5 even better. So I'm to be honest, I'm quite surprised that something that we have adopted and passed less than 2 years ago now seems to be as something raising on this question, they're tying our hands. Certainly not. Quite the opposite. I think that setting a target, if you want to put a particular percentage, and 3% is the one that we did pass 2 years ago. And if you look at even last year, certain municipality in York Region, correct me if I'm wrong, it does come in at 3. Of course, you cannot compare apples and oranges, but if you're asking where it comes from, it's not a number that actually has been just picked in the air. First, as I mentioned, model on 2 years ago. Secondly, there had been municipalities in York Region that come around that in their actual tax rate in terms of increase over last year. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll just leave it at that. I would much prefer that we leave that out and let the staff do their job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Silovitz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the same vein, I have a question, perhaps through you to our clerk. With small 7 added there, does that mean if we're going to vote on these recommendations, we're also voting on the small 7? Because we didn't have a vote on the bench to include it in the motion. Sorry, I'm just confused. Through you, Mr. Chair.
The motion's put on the floor with that clause. We could separate it out if we,
Okay, I asked that it be separated out. Thank you.
when we vote. No?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I don't see other speakers, and that's what I was going to ask for. I'm glad that it'd be separated out. I'm not going to support that target. I'm not going to support that number. It's not enough. It maybe as a cap or a maximum, but not a target. I think we should be targeting no increase. I think we should be doing the best we can to get you there, but we don't know. And there's so many variables, so many uncertainties. We haven't talked any numbers yet. We're starting off a process here. It'd be like starting a public meeting and saying, well, we as a council want this building to be 18 stories, and that's our target, but let's hear from the public. Because that's the most important thing. For me, it's about the public. We haven't got to them yet. We don't know what they want this year, or what their concerns are, or where they lie. And until that happens, I don't want to restrict us to a number or set any targets. I think it'd be premature to do so. So I don't support that one particular item, but I do support the rest of the recommendations. And I do at this time think it's important to acknowledge the mayor's option here to continue to work through this budget committee of the whole. The Ontario government has allowed mayors to come. Mayors could drop a budget on their council, and whether they like it or not, that's the budget. There's no requirement to have this tradition that we have in Richmond Hill of a budget committee of the whole. And I want to thank the mayor once again for including all of council and valuing the process that we go through year after year. As a council, as all of council, with opportunities for input and opportunities for discussion, and of course opportunities to include the public with everything that we do and to hear from them. So I'm looking forward to that. I think a lot of it's already been said, but we've we've made some hard decisions over the past 3 years that have got us to this position that we're in today. The contributions to the mill rate stabilization, but also we paid we paid back an over estimation when it came to investment income. Here we are again with a good return on our investment income, but in the past we were budgeting for to be receiving a lot more, and we stopped that. We phased that out. I don't know if everyone recalls, but that's something that has been done over the past 5 years. We've tripled the mill rate stabilization, the strength of that reserve. It's a better picture when it comes to capital asset sustainability because of those decisions that we've made. We were at a point, I believe, at the beginning of this term where our reserves were going to be depleted within 3 years or 3 to 5 years, and now we've got a 10-year runway to address that serious situation. But there's a lot of uncertainties out there internationally, and with this province, and there's a lot of indications that they're gonna handcuff us with further development charge decreases, and we've got that penalty looming over us of hitting targets that in my mind just aren't fair, that Richmond Hill have foundations for 27,000 units in the next 4 or 5 years, foundations poured. So given all those considerations, I'm glad to kick off once again this budget process and to support the staff recommendation. The movers asked for another opportunity. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate my colleagues' feedback. But to be completely honest, I never have anticipated the reaction it was, because to me, I thought that was this identical wording we all like-minded back only less than 24 months ago. But I've been reminded things change and so on and so on. I got it. And again, I said it before, and I want to thank Mayor West for also, the chair of the budget committee also echo again for including all of us to really have a really good discussion. At the end of the day, of course, it's the public. We are all taxpayers, and we have to say on it. But in my own humble view, I always thought that we took leadership and just set a target. If it's below, great, but in no way tying our hands. But in the spirit of unity, I also want to see the motion to be passed unanimously, I hope. So I am respectfully withdrawing that C7 with the way it is the same as recommended by staff. So that's my final motion.
It's on the floor.
It's an amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, through the chair. According to the procedure bylaw, if a motion has not been voted on, the mover can withdraw his motion, and then sounds like you would like to bring back a new one.
Thank you,
So,
Mr. Chair.
sorry, point of order. That's a blast from the past. But the motion would have to be withdrawn completely because the motion was put together as a full motion. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, I'll read. So section 5.6.2, withdrawal of a motion. After a motion has been moved and seconded, it is in the possession of council for consideration, but may be withdrawn by the mover at any time before it has been voted
Okay,
on.
so it has to be, the entire motion has to be removed. Okay, so I'll move the original motion then.
Okay, so we have the motion on the floor has been removed by the mover, and Mayor West, you want to move the staff recommendation.
Sure, I'll move the staff recommendation as it's written in the staff report.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously again. Thank you, Ken. We move on to 5.4. Sorry. No, we don't. With that, concludes our scheduled business, and Councillor Tree wants to move an adjournment. Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries.